No, I don't think so.
Okay, yeah. So I've kind of only been focusing on the Canvas one because I think it's really interesting.
It is really
Um,
cool. I've been playing
but
around with it too.
yeah, so I'll kind of talk about that and then some other things too. Let me share my screen just a second.
I'm glad you're doing Canvas because I'm familiar with HTML5, but I've never done anything with Canvas until I saw it the other day in office hours. So I'm glad
Oh,
that's what you
okay.
chose.
Yeah, so I mean, I'm just basically going to show you what are the new elements, and then I'll just show you an example of Canvas, and then yeah. So for my web app, I'm going to do like Tetris. I think I might do a couple games if I can get it working, but
Nice.
I'm gonna do a couple. I think Tetris is a hard enough one.
Yeah, I'm thinking of doing like a platform, like a puzzle platformer almost.
Yeah, and like I don't know, it makes it seem a lot more fun. I was gonna do like what is it? Flashcards, and then I'm like, I found Canvas. I'm like, okay, I'm not doing flashcards anymore. It's stupid.
Yeah.
Anyways, but if anybody wants to do flashcards, that's fine. It's not
Yeah.
stupid.
Oh, before you really get into it, I found a good tutorial on card flips.
Uh-huh.
Because he said he goes crazy for card flips. So
Oh,
I'll post
yeah.
that in Slack.
That'd be cool.
I've
Yeah.
used it before. It's really easy to do. So
Yeah, I
just a
wonder if
heads up.
somebody's going to talk about the 2D and 3D transitions, like CSS stuff today. But all right, so let's look at. So yeah, these you guys can see my screen, right?
Yep, I can.
Cool, just making sure. All right, and then I'm broadcasting as well. Okay, just making sure. All right, so yeah, these are like some of the newer HTML5 things, like a header and footer tags that you can basically give specific tags for part of your like HTML document. Like say if you're going to have like a header with a nav bar and things like that, and the logos and things like you can put in there, and like footer where you can put all the legal stuff and other external links and things like that. Article and section, I'm actually not too familiar with these, other than like section is like a section of I would think of like of an article, and then article.
I'm sorry to interrupt, but what I see on your screen, I don't know if this is what you intended, is I see the Slack window.
Oh, no, that's not it.
Okay.
Over here.
There we go.
I have
I'm
two
like,
screens,
I
sorry.
trying to tell us something.
All right. So anyways, back to this. Thank you. So yeah, so these are kind of the newer ones for kind of the page section. Looks like they have some new form elements. And then these are pretty interesting. These SVG and Canvas, I think, are pretty interesting. I think the SVG is where you can like draw custom shapes and things like that. And then the Canvas is basically where you can animate shapes and get them to move and stuff like that. So I was gonna just mainly
question
focus.
for you.
Yeah.
When it says new, like how new is always a relative term.
Yeah. I have
how
no
new
idea.
is new?
Let's Google it. When they come out. All right, let's see. I don't know. This looks like May 2010. I don't know. Does anybody else have a response? I don't know when they came out. Let's see. HTML5. Yeah, I'm not sure when it came out initially. But yeah, if anybody else.
That's fine. I was just curious.
Oh yeah, that's a good question.
Google says 2014 it went from proposed to recommended.
Okay, cool. Sweet. All right, so going back to some examples and showing you, sorry, let's do so show you an example of a block breaker game. And so just to show you what it actually looks like, is something like this. I haven't actually done it to where it will break the blocks, but it will like come off my paddle and go off the wall and change colors actually when it hits certain walls and things like that too, which is pretty fun. But it's being able to just animate elements. And so basically I can tell it to just draw this rectangle as you see below and then this ball. And then depending on what type of rules I have, I can give this a velocity, right? So in terms of just like a quick physics lesson, if you have an object, right, in a 2D space, it has an X and a Y coordinate, right? And if you give it a velocity, it's basically just changing the X and Y coordinate. And so that's what this program is basically doing, is I'm changing the X and Y coordinate, updating it constantly, like at maybe, I forget how many frames I'm doing it, maybe at like 20 milliseconds, milliseconds. And so I'm basically, that's how I'm getting these things to work like that. And then I do have something, so if it does go past here, it will actually say, oh, the game's over. So I can detect when something's, you know, actually hit the wall or hit the boundary, if that makes sense. So that's the example. So let's actually look at the code. So this is just a bunch of JavaScript that we're using. Excuse me. And so these are a lot of variables that I'm using within the script to make things work. But this is the main one that we're actually going to focus on, is this HTML5. This is the canvas tag that we're going to use right here. We're going to create our canvas, right? And so it's pretty simple. You just say, okay, I want my height and my width and my height, right, in canvas, and I can give it an ID if I want to style it, right? And then we go down here, and this is where we're really actually going to be doing some stuff. And so what I basically do is I say, okay, my var canvas, and we're going to use DOM, right? We've learned this, and I can get the ID, and then I can start doing things to it. And so I say, okay, well, then if I get this context of the canvas, and I say it's 2D, I guess in this case, then I can start manipulating this CTX right here. That's our canvas that we're going to be drawing on pretty much now. And so you can do different things, right? Like we can draw bricks, we can draw a ball, we can draw a paddle. In this case, our ball was a rectangle, right? So if we go down here to, let me make sure this is good enough. If we go down here to draw the ball, right? This is how we would draw something like that. We say, okay, CTX begin path. And then we can say, okay, this is how you would draw like a circle. So you can say, this is the position where I'm drawing it at, X and Y. Here's the ball radius. Forget what this one is. Why doesn't it tell me? Dang it. I think this is the beginning angle at what you want it to do initially go, and then this is the ending angle that you want it to go. So you want it to go from 0 to 2 pi, right? So that's a full circle. So you could do like a semicircle where you could essentially make a Pac-Man, if you know what I mean, like a Pac-Man character. So you could animate that Pac-Man too, and I'll show you something like that. So basically you could change from like a ball, like a closed ball, to an half open ball, basically animating a Pac-Man character. So that'd be something to think about too. If you want to do a game, you could do Pac-Man, which would be fun. So these are kind of some things you could do if you want to just draw a straight rectangle. Something like this, you could say, okay, this is where my X and my Y, and then this is how wide it is, the rectangle, and then how not wide it is, or sorry, the height. Okay, so that's basically how you would draw something. And then we have this draw function right here. So this will be called, you know, it's like, okay, we have this draw function, but how are we going to call it every time, right? Like once the page comes, we could just call the draw function like this, right? Essentially, right? But that's only going to be loaded one time, right? When we load the page for the first time. Well, there's this special function down here called set interval right here. And we give it a function and we tell it in milliseconds how often to run. So basically what this will do is it will run every 20 milliseconds. So if you wanted to run every second, you would say like 1,000. All right, so that's kind of like the basis of like getting things to run at an interval, like continually calling to draw. So if we were right now, all we've done is we've drawn like a circle and a rectangle, right? And we're drawing it at every 2 milliseconds. So in order to actually make things move, we need to then actually get them to move, right? We have to give them velocities. We have to change the X and the Y, right? And so that's what I do on, I just have some functions up here. I didn't actually do these functions, but I have some for my Tetris. There's just these functions right here where depending on if the ball is in a certain radius right here, we're going to add, that's the change. Every time we call that draw function each time, I'm adding to the X and the Y a dx and a dy. So basically, I'm just taking into account the velocity every time and adding X and Y. And so that's why it's moving around. So yeah, and so basically Canvas is pretty cool in terms of you can take these things, like these elements, you can draw them, and then depending on where the positions are at, you can keep changing their positions to get them to move. That's kind of the overall concept of what you're doing. And the creative aspect is, okay, what shapes do I draw? And then you can track things. You can say, okay, if the paddle width is minus this basically is detecting how to move the paddle. So if it's a certain point, it won't let it move anymore in detection and things like that. Let's see what else. Any questions so far?
I have a couple of questions.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if I'm understanding correctly, the reason you use a canvas is because it's refreshing or redrawing on the screen. So
Yeah.
Is that why you wouldn't use like CSS or an SVG to draw, or would you use those if it were more complicated pictures, like say it was not a Pac-Man, say it was Zelda or something? I don't know.
So I think honestly, you can draw those things based on this. This where is it? I mean, maybe you can with the SVG, but the canvas, I guess, is just a quick tag that's where you can keep updating things.
You can draw images directly onto a canvas, actually.
Oh, you can draw images directly onto a canvas? Okay.
You can scale them and everything.
Yeah, I didn't know that.
It's pretty versatile. It's
Mhm.
just it's pretty new, so it's not used a whole lot, but you could make anything pretty much in Canvas.
Yeah, yeah. Okay. All right. Another question? Good so far?
Yeah.
All right. So yeah, and that's basically what you can do with these things. Some other fun things that you can do, it's more kind of the JavaScript, is you can add event listeners, and maybe somebody will talk about this. So you can actually handle the key inputs. And so if you handle the key inputs, then you can then do some more things in this like draw function that I have. This is kind of like my main function, this draw right here. It's calling all these different other functions. Now, an important thing to have right here is this, where it clears everything that was there before. So if you didn't clear, it would basically streak, because you would have all these things that are drawn right next to one another, but at different locations, because the location's slightly moving every frame. So what you want to do is you want to clear the canvas beforehand, and then you redraw everything again, pretty much. That's what it does.
I have another dumb question.
No dumb,
Because I'm
there are
not
no
going to
dumb
do a
questions.
game. I'm not going to do a game because this is beyond me, but I'm getting it. I'm understanding it.
Uh,
But so when you say you're adding the event listener, so I'm assuming you're using like the arrow keys or something to move your paddle. So every time the arrow key goes, you've established some kind of amount that represents so that it moves. Okay.
So yeah, this is a key down handler, and this is the key up handler, and that basically is just changing when you're actually going to change the position. But this is what this basically does. Says if right is pressed, then I'm going to take the X of the paddle and I'm going to move it to the right 7. If I hit the left, I'm going to take it to the left 7.
Okay.
Yeah. So yeah, that's kind of, I think, it for so far. And this is a good example. This is what I posted in what is it? Yeah, I posted in in the Slack channel.
I did it the other day. It's really easy to follow.
Oh yeah, it's really easy, and they have all the code there too. So if you just want to even just practice, like, I mean, I counted that as my time, right? So, I mean, if you just want to practice Canvas or some of these HTML5 tags, and then it gives you opportunities to change some of the things too. So. Yeah. So yeah, and then there's some other cool things you can do. Like you can make kind of like custom shapes too. Like with my Tetris, you can basically draw lines and then connect them pretty much. So I can make like an L shape and an S shape and things like that. So there's a lot of stuff out there on like the Mozilla Developer Network and things like that. So yeah, so that's what I got for this week. So
very cool. I learned a lot from that. So thank you.
Yeah. Basically all it is you have the Canvas tag and then you're just doing a bunch of JavaScript pretty much. That's how I look at it. You're just doing a bunch of JavaScript functions and saying, okay, how do I move the things around here, and then give it rules. Like if this ball were hit this brick, then the brick, we're no longer going to draw that brick anymore. So yeah. All right. Who wants to go next?
Who else is presenting? I know I am. I don't know who else is.
I am. I can go next. Mine's pretty short.
Is it Timothy?
Yeah.
Okay. I couldn't tell which one of you was talking.
No, it's okay. Let me pull it up. Whew. Okay, so I had the topic of transforms. And CSS3 transforms are like transitions and animations, except they're just, you could imagine them as one frame. So it's not going to compute anything. It's just going to change to whatever you tell it to change. And the syntax is a little different. Where like the transitions, you're telling it what value you want it to go to. The transform, you're going to give it like how much you want it to change by. So I have a very simplistic example. Here are 3 rectangles that I started out with. And then when I apply the transition, they're going to look like this. And I haven't restyled them at all except for the transition. I'm sorry, not the transition, the transform. And so here's the CSS for the transforms. It's pretty simple. First one is scale. So you can upscale or downscale any CSS element or any HTML element by making this transform function scale. So we're scaling it by 2 on the X and 2 on the Y. And that's what gives us this larger red div container. And there are a bunch of different pre-made transform functions, but you don't have to use the pre-made ones. You can actually define your own transform function if you know what you're doing, which I don't, so I did not do that. But all the for it is all the like definitions for it is available if you look it up in MDN. I had it open, but I don't see it now. Sorry about that. That's not right. CSS. There we go. So here's all the different preset functions that you can fire. There's a bunch. Translate is just to move something without changing its size or anything. You're just changing its X and Y position. Scale is to make it larger or smaller. Rotate, pretty self-explanatory. Skew, and there's a bunch. And if you go into transform function, please specify exactly how you want it to transform, which I didn't read into this because this is math. I think it's pretty complicated, but I mean, it's not overly complicated. But so it's possible for you to use the matrix functions to tell it exactly how you want it to change. And that's about it. They're pretty basic. I can't really imagine a lot of uses for them, just because transition is going to just make a bunch of transforms on your element. So if you want it to look fancy, you're probably going to use a transition instead of just transforming it right away, because the transforms just happen. They don't have any steps in between. It just goes from what it was to whatever you want to transform it into. If you want to have extra, like if you want it to slowly transform, you're going to use a transition or an animation to make it happen. Any questions?
I'm good, and I think we have some overlap in our topics today, so that's kind of cool. Like you gave an intro, and I'm doing transitions, but I have transforms in there, so it'll be a good kind of, we work well together.
Sweet. All right. Well, I am good then.
Okay, so if you guys are ready, I can share my screen. Okay, so what I did was, have you guys used CodePen at all?
No, I haven't.
So this, in the advanced CSS class, they had us do a lot of work in CodePen, and I ended up really liking it. It's a great place to kind of experiment and play with things. So what it does is you have 3 windows here. I've got my HTML. And can you guys see my mouse when I point to stuff, just out of curiosity?
Yes.
Okay, so you've got your HTML, then in the middle you've got your CSS, and I'm using Sass with my CSS, so I'll tell you a little bit about that, and then JavaScript. And so for this, to just have basic HTML in here, and where I'm using an on-click event, like I talked about last week, not very well, but I do know how to use them. So anyways, there's an on-click event here, which will call my function from the JavaScript, and then I just have some basic HTML in here. And then in the CSS, the difference between this, if you're not familiar with Sass, is that Sass allows you to set variables for some of your items. So you can see I set some variables up here at the top. And so that way, anytime I want to talk about the menu icon height, I know it's already be 5 pixels. So if I want to make a change to it, I can just change it here, and it'll change it everywhere that I call that variable. So on here, let me just show you what we're doing. I have this little slide out menu here. So if I click the X, it's going to transition back. And on hover, it changes colors. And if you click it, the X transforms. There's our transform. And the sidebar transitions out. So in here, you can see, because some of the transitions also are like on hover. So you can do some transitions in CSS. And I'm not sure how this class expects you to do it, like if we're supposed to focus just on JavaScript and how we're controlling the CSS with the JavaScript, or if you're really supposed to be understanding CSS. Because there's some transitions you can manage just with the CSS, like the hover on here when it's closed, or when you hover over a link, that's actually technically a transition. And so let me find the sidebar here. And I actually had to redo this when I did it for my class before. I got marked down on it, and I'll show you why. So I click it and see how it eases in. Mine was just jumping in. And I'm like, what did I do wrong? My sidebar comes in, and the instructor's like, no, it's supposed to slide in. So I had to learn how to fix that. So I don't think I'll ever forget the transition again, because this is what I had left off on mine right here, was this piece right here. So the transition, and you can use, I forget the terminology, so let me see if I can find it real quick. I started to create slides for you guys, but I don't know if I closed that window. But it's shorthand for it. And I know I can find it real quick on W3 Schools, because I can show you what the,
Is it the Bezier function you're talking about?
yeah, but there's a few different ones, like you can slide in and out.
Right.
Oh, I did it on Google Drive. We can go over here. Let's see. Because I didn't know how familiar anybody was. And plus, I have to do my professionalism and show you guys stuff. So, so I just did a couple quick slides. So the transition timing function property, these are the choices you can do. You can ease, which is a slow start, then fast, then slow. Linear is the same speed all the way in. You ease in, you slowly start, and then and then on the ease out, the end is slow. And what I did on that one was the ease in and out, which is a slow start and end. And then this is the Bezier, where you define your own values. So, but the point I was trying to get to was the shorthand. So you can set each one of the things separately, or you can, or you can do the shorthand, which is what I had done on the sliding menu right here. I did the shorthand version of it. So I specified the time, the direction, and then eased in and out. Does that make sense?
Can you share this code on Slack?
Yeah, I can give you the link to it, and it's super fun with CodePen. Let me show you something. And I had never done it this way before, but I had done something similar for my other class, but I didn't want to reuse the exact same code, and I changed a few things and fixed my transition. I made my sidebar a little bit bigger. But once I give you the link, you can go over here and you can click on fork. And so then it copies the whole thing, and then now you can play with it and change it and experiment with it, and you can change it right in front of your eyes. So if I go down here to my sidebar, this is what I love about it. So I can tell it to take 3 seconds.
Oh, no.
How many? How long did you write it? 20? You're going to be bored.
I was trying to see how slow it is.
Okay, I'll do 10. We'll meet in the middle. How's that?
Okay.
Oops, if I can type. I don't have to save or anything. It automatically updates it, and you're there.
Oh, that wasn't 10 seconds.
It wasn't, huh? Okay, now we have to do 20 just to see.
Let's see.
There it goes.
Okay. I want to put really slow transitions in everything I do.
But you can see I didn't have to read, because since I'm using Sass, if I was to do something simple like that, I would have to compile my code, and so it's kind of fun to play with it here in CodePen.
So you use what? Sorry, SAS?
Sass, which is, I'm really bad at saying these things, but it's a way, like you take CSS. I tried clicking tidy CSS before and it messed everything up, so I'm afraid to do it now. But regular CSS, I would just say background is blue or something.
Uh-huh.
But using Sass, I can set.
Oh, variables.
Yeah.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
And
Okay.
so you're making your code so you don't have to repeat so much code, so it makes it smaller, doesn't take up as much room, and you can make changes faster.
I see. Cool.
So then over here, my JavaScript, I'm just basically when on the click, I'm calling this function, which is going to mostly it's going to transition the thing in. I think I changed it back. Yeah. And then also make the transform on the icon. Any questions? So I just thought this was applicable, like even though you guys are all doing games, the reason I chose this is because, you know, even if I play Candy Crush, there's like a little gear that you click on the gear to change your settings. And, you know, for my app, I'm going to do something that's for a conference thing. So I'm thinking that they could pick these different sessions. So I kind of think this could be used in a variety of ways. And I did stumble on a blog post or something. I'll have to go find it again, where the guy did everything. He did slide in from the right, slide down from the top, slide up from the bottom. And so like a lot of times on games, it seems like the gear's in the lower left side or something where you click on it. So you could do the same thing and just pick which direction you want it to come from.
Yeah, we'll definitely still use this. So I'll have to. I think we have to use everything. So I'll even have to try to figure out how to use transitions or something. Or is that part of? Or not transitions? Wait. This is transitions.
Transform. Yeah,
Yeah,
I
transforms. Is transforms part of transitions? Can you just?
Well, they're two different things. So this X right here is doing a transform. So it starts out with the 3 bars. When you click it, it transforms. So you can look at the, here's my menu icon stuff here. So it kind of establishes what it looks like. And then it tells you like translate it 0, 0. So then, and then so each line, one's the before, one's the after.
Okay.
And they have different. So this is like what it does with the X.
Sweet.
And I actually submitted this as I don't know if he's going to accept it. I'm waiting to see, but I asked him, can I just submit a CodePen? Because I mean, this shows it all. So I don't know if I have to actually upload it to my website. So I'm anxious to see if he'll accept this as my submission for some of this. So I don't have anything else unless you guys have more questions.
I have an off-topic question. Is SCS or is SAS okay? Is it fine for use SAS? Is this just a tool?
I asked him that question as well, because if he tells me no, what I'll have to do is just go in here, take out my variables and put back in the actual things. So that was one of the questions I asked him.
Fine. I don't think it's like it doesn't give you an advantage over like,
Right,
it's not like a bootstrap or anything.
It's not a library of any sort. It's
just
yeah.
It saves you time from having to write out variables. Like, yeah.
And if he does say you can't, I think you can view the compiled CSS with that dropdown and then just copy and paste that.
Since we forked it, I'll do it again. And yes. Okay, so whatever I did yesterday, like it grayed this out and I couldn't do anything. So I was chicken to do it again, but since this is a copy of it.
I wouldn't
so then I can just copy and paste it.
Minimize CSS might
Excuse
be
me?
I wouldn't try the minimize. That might be nuts.
Yeah, the minimize, it just makes
it takes out all the white space.
Yeah. They do that in like, I know like ASP.NET. Well, I mean, that's where I've seen it before. They use the min,
right.
JavaScript mins.
When they minimize JavaScript, it That makes me worried because
Oh,
I can't
yeah.
find anything. I'm like, oh no,
Oh yeah.
it's minimized.
Yeah. Well, good job, everybody. Good show.
Yeah, I
Thank
think I'm
you.
gonna use this code pen because it looks easier.
It is super fun. It's kind of addicting. I can't wait till I graduate because I don't have time to play on there, but they even have like challenges and they'll have some, I don't know, some topic and everybody kind of tries to make something related to that topic. So it can be super fun.
Oh, that's cool.
All right. Well, I guess that's it then.
So will you send the, oh, I have a couple off-topic questions. Can we
Yeah.
stop recording and then I'll ask them?
Yeah.